Jim's not feeling it.
Oh, I'm just kind of in my mind getting into the groove.
From the John DeVito Broadcast Center, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Armchair Experts with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich on Wednesday, July the 20th, the year 2016. And now here they are, full of laughter and fun and breathing on their own, Jim and Rich.
Oh, yes, once again. We have no plans, which probably means this is going to be one of our better shows.
Well, it's good to see both of you guys.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah.
And we're going to do this again next week, too.
Now see, that's the
Now,
the bonus.
There's the bonus from that. You know, this was one of these things, I have no real ideas of anything to want to talk about today. Sometimes I think the period of time when we don't do a show and we start texting back and forth, we leave our best material on the phone.
Yeah,
you
true.
know. Although I did see something yesterday. I saw an item as I was scanning the news feed on Twitter or Facebook or something, that the Bulls were preparing a trade offer to the Clippers for Blake Griffin. And based on their performance during this offseason, for some reason, I'm now scared.
Well, did it give any details?
No, that they were just preparing an offer.
Where did you see this?
It was on some article that crossed my line. I wish I could remember. I should have saved the clip and sent it to you, so at least I would have had the URL, so I could go back and find it. Even though you can't read it on your phone, because
how many years is I would say he's been in the league? What, about 4 years, maybe
4 or 5 years?
And he started out very well, but the last 2 years have been was he injured last year?
He had injuries last year and got himself in trouble when he punched the equipment manager and broke his hand again. I think that's what the deal was.
Okay. Yeah, I knew that there were some sketchy things going on with Blake Griffin.
Yeah, but if for some reason it just if they hadn't done some of the deals that they had done so far, I would have said, "Oh, this should be interesting."
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm thinking, "Oh my God, if they trade him, what are they going to screw up now?" Unless of course they send Jimmy Butler and come back with something.
Yeah, it's still hard to figure out where they're going.
I know. There was a great quote in they had an article in the current issue of SI of deals and trades and things going on and free agent signings, and they had a sidebar of a couple of teams, including the Bulls, and I thought the best quote in the Bulls was about the Bulls talking about their deals, and it said, "It's really impressive how little sense this makes."
Yeah, you know what, Jim? I read something where they said Rajon Rondo would give them the toughness that they seemed to lack last year.
Yeah.
But then I thought to myself, the same guys last year that they said lacked toughness were the same guys in the previous years who looked very tough with a different coach.
With a different coach. I don't understand anything that they're doing.
No, not at all.
I mean, they talk about the silly season coming up near the end of the month when you've got the baseball trade deadline coming up, but obviously the silly season now is NBA signings.
Yeah,
with all the money they have going out. What else is on your mind, Mr. Massaro? What have you been up to the last couple of weeks?
You know what? Just I'll tell you, the sports pages are fairly quiet.
Yes, they are.
We had, you know what though? We don't get into golf very often, but I tell you what, Henrik Stenstrom had an excellent British Open.
Fourth round,
and I didn't catch any of it on TV. I like to at least get a little bit of it because it's a great tradition.
Yeah, it kind of surprised me because I didn't watch any of it I saw a news item that on Sunday morning, looking at my phone, that Stenstrom won, and I thought, oh my God, Phil must have really fallen apart. And Phil shot what, a 65,
Yeah,
got beat by this guy.
well, they whoever wrote the article for the Sun Times compared it to the duel in the Sun between Nicklaus and Watson
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah.
And I mean, it'd been interesting to see 240-something guys battle all the way to the end the way they did. And I think it was probably, I wish I would have seen some of it, because it was probably just one of the better British Opens in recent memory.
Yeah, and when you look at it, when you look at these two guys just matching each other like that, and your third place finisher, you had what?
Sure.
I can't remember who it was. I was talking about somebody about this yesterday, and he told me. And you've got Stenstrom, who finishes 20 under,
Yeah.
and Phil at 17 under,
Yeah, that's amazing.
and your third place finisher was 6 under. Look at the gap there, and what kind of
It makes me wonder, and the new guys, it's a great new generation of golfers, and those guys are dominating. But I'm just wondering the fact that these are two veterans, and the British Open, the courses that it offers are sort of different types of courses than what the normal PGA player is used to.
Right.
And the fact that Phil and Stenstrom are veterans, maybe that is what led itself to them being so far under par. And then your next, as you say, the next guy was what, 6 under?
6 under, I think.
Yeah.
And you look at the names now in the PGA leaders, and you see this new generation of guys like Dustin Johnson, Jason Day, Adam Scott, Jordan Spieth. Phil's number 5 on the standings right now. So there's still room for an old timer in there.
You know what always bothers me with the coverage of Phil Mickelson? I mean, he came along at a time when Tiger Woods was at his peak. But here's a guy who's sort of a model of consistency. I want to say this is the 10th or 11th time that he's finished second in a major.
Yeah.
Which is nothing to sneeze at. I mean, you didn't win, but you were right there 10 or 11 times. On top of it, I want to say he's probably won 5 or 6 majors of his own. And what people sometimes overlook is that the great athletes are, by definition, are very consistent, or more consistent than your other guys. And your other guys are very good, no disrespect to them, but they don't have that consistency that on a regular basis that the really top performers have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I remember years ago, Jim, I read an article in the Sporting News where, and this amazed me, the average for a year, the difference between, say, the top money guy on the PGA Tour list and the bottom guy was like, let's just say 2 and a fraction strokes. I mean, you're talking about over the course of a whole season. That's the difference in average, but it's where you get them. I think. That really makes the
it would.
difference.
Well, okay, I'll give you. You talk about that. They have the FedEx Cup leaders right now, but some of the other stats. Dustin Johnson is right now has the best average per round.
Mm-hmm.
69.101. The 10th place, Brooks Koepka, 69.872, so 0.7 of a stroke.
Right. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. And Phil's number 2, by the way, at 69.218. Obviously, this British Open helped.
yeah, that's for sure.
That brought your average down really well.
That's for sure. I you know what we Jim to because I'm thinking. With an hour to fill here, and we normally don't talk golf, and I don't want to disrespect golf. I wanted to bring up the Masters because it's one of the 4 major championships during the year.
Yeah.
But the thing that just popped into my mind is, what did you think about the? I'm flipping over to the Blackhawks now. What did you think about the Brian Campbell signing?
I think it's a no lose type
Uh-huh.
thing. You still got a guy who got a veteran presence. It's not going to cost you a lot. It brings some things to the defense that maybe were lacking
Yeah.
a little bit last year. I don't know. I don't know what else to say about it.
I tell you, I always like when
I-
he was here, because I mean I never saw him play when he was with Buffalo. He came to the Hawks, and I was sort of disappointed when they let him go. They had to let him
They
go
had to
in
let
the,
him
in
go.
the salary
Yeah.
purge because of the salary cap after what was that 2010
The first
Stanley
cup.
But I tell you, I think at that point in time he was getting not a lot, but a little heat from the press because he didn't do this, he didn't do that. But I always loved the way the guy brought the puck out of the zone.
I did too.
Yeah.
I did too, and I don't know if I can't even think of anybody that I could compare that to right now.
Yeah, you know what? I'll tell you what. The guy that I look at, and again, it goes back to consistency because people will say, well, so far he hasn't shown much, but on the occasions when I've seen Victor Svedberg play, he's got that nice long stretch pass out of the zone.
Okay. I haven't really seen him that much to know to compare him, but okay.
Yeah, but I think well, take a look. Basically, you're saying Campbell's going to replace Johnny Oduya,
Yeah.
and I think you're going to get a lot of the same things that you got with Johnny Oduya.
Yeah.
A good, steady defenseman.
Yeah.
I think probably maybe offensively a little bit better than Oduya. But yeah, I think they. And then the nice thing is, what they're anticipating is that if Kempny, the guy they signed from Czechoslovakia, works out, that pairing then becomes Van Riemsdyk and Kempny, which is the third pairing. And those guys don't have to have as many minutes on the ice, but you have a solid pair when they do get on the ice.
Yeah. What do you think of whatever role that Marian Hossa is going to fill this year?
Yeah, that'll be a difficult probably decision. I think Marian Hossa is probably going to be a third or fourth liner.
Yeah.
I know they liked what he did last year when he was paired up with Kruger.
Yeah.
So,
But the issue is there's 37 years old. There's a lot of minutes on those legs.
yeah, you know what though,
and-
Jim, I have not seen any slowdown,
No.
speed-wise from Hossa. But I think what's happened is something has happened with his maybe, and I'm not an expert on hockey, but I want to say his release maybe. He doesn't seem to get the drop on the goalies, if that's a good way to put it.
I think it's right. His comment was right that even though he had 13 goals, that there were a lot more that could have gone in.
Yeah, so well,
It could have been. It could be the point that you just brought up. Maybe it's something with his release. Maybe it was just one of those things this year.
now having said that, I wonder if say whoever on the Hawks takes a close look at those things, maybe that's something that's also fixable.
That could be.
But I would say this, at 37 years old, and Marian Hossa plays a hard game in the sense that, there's a guy who works hard on both ends of the ice.
Yeah.
Now you've had a lot of minutes. This guy does not miss anything when it comes to international competition. He represents his country. So you got a lot of minutes and a lot of what I would say hard minutes. Now, at 37, it still probably could be effective, but is that starting, the wear and tear starting to show in some subtle ways? I don't think he's breaking down, but it's showing up at some point.
You know what I mean? If you think of the fact that 3 out of his 6 years here,
that we won the Stanley Cup.
and you've got roughly three seasons between exhibition and playoffs where you've got over 100 games or more
Right.
on those legs. maybe this year everybody needed that first round elimination to get a little rest.
I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt it. When you look at guys like, say, Hossa or Duncan Keith, who puts a ton of minutes on, and
Yeah.
Seabrook and Hjalmarsson, and take a guy like Hjalmarsson, who's consistently blocking shots, and I can't tell you how many times in the course of the seasons he's been with us where I've heard the announcer say, you know what, Hjalmarsson got stung by that shot a little bit, and he's sort of, dragging a leg as he comes off the ice or whatever, and you're thinking, wow, is this a big injury? And the next shift he's back.
And he's right out there. Yeah. Let's see. By the way, just in case you're looking for something to look forward to, Bears training camp opens a week from tomorrow.
I think the Bears are going to have a nice team and a good season. I have a lot of trust in John Fox and Ryan Pace and where they've come from football wise.
Yeah, I like the fact that he's put his trust in the coaching staff. Ryan Pace has put his trust in the coaching staff to let them do their job. The one thing I'll be curious about this year, since how many offensive coordinators now has Jay Cutler had to work with?
Yeah, I don't
half
have
a dozen
the number anymore, but I think I think you're it's probably everybody's concern that how is this going to go with another offensive guy as far as the coordinator goes.
Yeah.
But, I think that I think it'll be okay.
Okay.
I think it'll be okay. I heard I was on my way from one place to another last night. I'm listening to the Cubs game, and the Cubs were, obviously playing well. They beat the Mets. They had lost 8 in a row to them, including the playoffs last year, and people start to get a little goofy about that. But Pat Hughes made a comment that Ron Coomer definitely seconded, and I don't often, as I listen to the radio, make comments out loud. But when he made this comment, I said, "That's right." He said, "It's not so much who you play, but when you play them." And I think when we talked about the playoffs last year, Jim, I think part of our conversation was, geez, man, the Mets pitching, just looked dominant.
Yeah.
And I believe I said to you at the time, you know what? It's not that the Cubs are so overmatched by the Mets, but their pitching looked lights out. And look what happened, say, a week later when they faced the Royals. I think their pitching was still good, but not quite as good.
Not quite as good.
So you caught them at a bad time. And you know what? That happens. When I listen to people say, and there are certain players, let's say, that really have reputation, say, as clutch players, or these guys are, good in a tight spot. And there are guys like that. But I'd say overall, even for a guy like that, it is when you play, who you play against, when you play them, more than anything.
You catch them at times when you've got players hurt.
Mm-hmm.
You've got players tired. The series against the Mets in New York was during that stretch of 24 games in 24 days.
Yeah, that wore them down a bit.
The series, the National League Championship Series last year, you had Cub pitchers who were tired.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the philosophy that Joe kind of realized then and has tried to instill in them now to guys like Lackey and Arrieta and John Lester, it's okay now at this time of year to go 5 or 6 innings.
Mm-hmm.
That's that much less wear on your arm.
Yeah.
And you'll be able to pitch more come October.
Well, they're not saying it, but I think they've done some strategic things here with their bullpen that people aren't commenting on. Now just 2-3 weeks ago, right in that stretch.
By the way, Joe Nathan may be up this weekend.
Yeah, that's what they're saying. They had what's the guy's name? they had Spencer Patton and they had a lefty up from the minors that took up some innings, and they have Clayton Richard on what I'm looking at as sort of a bogus rehab.
Well, he's up now.
He's back up.
Yeah.
And, Trevor Cahill just went on to DL. Now, I'm
Yeah.
wondering if these guys are really hurt or they're getting a little blow.
That's the same thing I thought. Is this going to be the manipulation of the DL?
Yeah, which I think it probably is. David Ross is another example. I would say David Ross, he was out on bereavement, I believe, or paternity.
No.
Concussion
he
protocol, maybe?
He had a week-long concussion protocol.
Yeah, which and I never heard that there was really an injury. But I would say for probably a good 3 weeks, David Ross didn't play. Wilson Contreras has been up. He may stay.
I think.
I think really, basically, Montero is beat up, and he's hanging in there.
It's not really good to have your number one. It's not really good to have the man you consider your number one catcher with a bad back.
Yeah, I mean, he's beat up. Ross, they gave a little break because they probably want him fresh for down the stretch.
Yeah.
And, Contreras has done a really good job. The other interesting thing for the Cubs, Jim, is, of course, when Dexter Fowler comes back, that'll be fine.
He's going to start his rehab now.
But I'm just wondering what's going to happen when Soler. It seems to me that they want to lengthen that recovery out because I'm not sure if they know what exactly they want to do with him.
Yeah. Fowler starts his minor league rehab at Iowa today, and expected to be back for the weekend unless there's a setback. Soler is also heading for Iowa to start a rehab, but they have not projected any return date for him. And Zobrist is getting a few days off right now.
Yeah, he needs it.
Yeah, he needs it.
Let me ask you this. Now, I had heard, and I don't know if this is credible or if this is just somebody talking, off the top of their head, but they said, well, what if the Yankees would make a deal where, say it was either Schwarber or the other name I heard was Baez, and they said, okay, we're going to give you both Miller and Chapman for that guy. And I'm like, the question I would pose to you is this, because I read what Epstein said in the paper the other day. He says, we have guys that we like. If you want to call them untouchable, you can. But if we get a call and somebody wants to talk, doesn't matter who the guy is, we're going to listen.
Yeah.
Now, what I started to think, remember when we were kids and you come up with these crazy trade ideas because, you were a Cubs fan and we want to, how about if we trade Tony Taylor for Mickey Mantle or something?
There you go, yeah.
So
we were 9. What did we know?
Yeah, what did we know? But let me, the question I would ask is, what if a proposed trade was Chris Bryant and Jake Arrieta? I'm not saying this would happen, but these are things that you would have to think about. Chris Bryant and Jake Arrieta for Brian Harper and Steven Strasburg. Now, if you're
Harper's
Theo Epstein, I'm not saying it could happen, Jim.
Yeah.
But say, that this was a proposed trade. Now, I'm not saying is it a good trade, is it a bad trade, I'm saying if that was on the table, and that's a huge if because it would never be on the table.
Be on the table.
But I'm using it because these are players we can all picture in our minds. If you were the Cubs, would you have to think about that? You know what? You'd have to think about it pretty hard.
You'd have to think about it. I don't know if you'd want to pull the trigger, but you'd certainly have to think about it. So, I'll give you one to think about.
No, but this is the type of thing that Epstein is talking about.
Right.
If you want to talk about one or some of our really excellent players, talk to me, but you got to throw something out there that's interesting.
How about this for something interesting? Baez to the White Sox for Quintana.
Forget about it.
Why?
I don't. First off, I wouldn't trade Baez at all.
Mm-hmm.
You have to think about this. Zobrist is 30-some years old.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to be the second baseman forever. He may, at some point in the contract they gave him, become a for real utility guy again. And Baez is going to likely be the guy who steps into that spot.
Okay.
And I just don't see anybody right now in the system that's comparable to Baez. And I just wouldn't.
Okay.
I wouldn't do that.
All right. I was,
Plus, if I was the Sox, I wouldn't do that either.
no. I was just curious what you thought of that, because somebody batted that combination around, and I kind of scratched my head at that one and thought about it for a minute.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that from either point of view. I wouldn't.
Okay.
It would take a lot if I was the Sox for me to give up Quintana. I know the papers like to talk about it, but I don't think he's a guy you want to give up.
Okay, so with the roster manipulations and the roster issues that they're going to have with DL, with guys coming off the DL, is Soler a good trade bait?
I don't think you're going to get much for him, so I don't.
Yeah,
think
I don't
he's
know.
much in the way of trade bait.
I don't know if he is actually worth anything right now.
Yeah,
You're not going to get a top line reliever from the Yankees for him.
No, the only thing I would say is you've mentioned before that, and I thought I had read it on the internet, that the Braves really love Soler.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the Braves would have to offer or what the Cubs really want. But again, if they really love a guy for whatever reason, maybe that's a possibility.
Yeah.
Even though when was the last time he played? It's been over a month.
Over a month at least.
Yeah. So what are you going to do with him?
Yeah, and really, obviously, probably, Atlanta's got a complete teardown.
Yeah.
Well, they're 32-61 right now. Two teams that are going to have to go through complete teardowns are Atlanta and Minnesota.
Jim, I think the Cubs would probably. I'd say this. I think the Cubs are going to have to make a move with him because I don't know who you're going to get rid of if he's back on the active roster. I'm pretty sure with the catching situation being what it is and the fact that Madden seems okay with sticking Contreras, say, in the outfield, I think you're going to go forward and see them, probably keep three catchers as long as Contreras can play another position.
As long as Contreras is comfortable in another position, right? They're going to. If somebody does give you those two pitchers, the Yankees, and they say, we'll take Schwarber, you pull the trigger?
No, I wouldn't.
As long as you've got Contreras playing at the level he is, do you pull the trigger?
No, I mean I don't look at it like that. First off, I'm not convinced that I don't care what the papers say. I'm not convinced that the Yankees are going to trade those guys.
I find it difficult to believe that the Yankees would trade those two players for a guy who's on the DL.
Well, you know what though? They're looking at him as being Babe Schwarber. I mean, he would be
great in that ballpark.
Yeah,
he would be great in that ballpark.
Now,
because that right field is along the same lines as old Yankee Stadium, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's not very. It's
a good park for a left-handed power hitter. Now I could see them making that trade, but unless it's somebody like that they could get, which I don't think they're going to get from the Cubs. I'm not convinced that they're trading either one of those guys unless they really, really get something that they want. Mm-hmm. Now, and the other thing is, if you're talking about, I don't believe, you keep reading, okay, they'll trade these guys for prospects. The long-awaited Yankee, what would you say, retooling of the Yankees. I don't believe that either. I think the Yankees are the Yankees. That's the image they want to portray, And what they want to do is reload, not retool, if you want to put it that way.
They don't want to go back to those days before George bought them when they were in last place.
Yeah, I don't think so.
And I can't imagine that.
And they need a lot, but I would say, they're probably willing to pay for it in the off season if guys are available. I don't know who's. And now the other trading chip that they have, and I heard, and again, I don't know if this is just hot air because a lot of it is, but they're saying Carlos Beltran is having a good year, but he's getting, I think he's 38 or 39.
He's up in years.
But they're saying maybe a team like the Sox, who might need if they can still consider themselves contenders, if they have.
That was
the
my
prob-
next. That was
the problem
my next
is the Sox
subject.
have no prospects to give.
Right. That was my next subject that I wanted to talk about. At this point in time, I can't imagine the Sox being buyers.
Well, they might be, Jim. But you know what? They've convinced themselves in the past, and that's their mentality. I believe.
Oh God Almighty!
Here, listen. Let's put it this way: why do you trade for Shields? Why do you sign Justin Morneau? I mean, as much as you look at those moves and say why, the only reason you make those moves is if you think you could contend this year. The other thing I have to question, because you look at a guy, they just brought up Fulmer. The guy has been a professional for less than, 2 months.
Or 2 months, yeah.
And here's, so they want to, it's another thing. I can't find the words to describe what I'm feeling here. I look at Carlos.
Just imagine if you were a White Sox fan.
Yeah. I look at Carlos Rodon, who they say has terrific stuff, but that they rushed to the majors.
They rushed him in,
and he
needs
been good. Then he's been bad. It's going to be the same story with this kid.
Yeah.
I'd say the same thing goes for Tim Anderson. He's had a really strong start, but you know what? We're talking about maybe a guy who's been up for a month and a half. There's a lot of guys who've had a good month and a half, and then the league sort of
and everybody
catches up
everybody
to them.
figured them out.
Yeah,
and Anderson is
he's at 279.
279.
Yeah. 5 homers. I don't know how many RBIs. They just
four homers and 10 RBIs.
He just swapped places in the batting order last night with Adam Eaton because he had a rough series against the Angels. I want to say he was 0 for 11, and
everybody was 0 for
few.
everybody was 0 for with that series out there.
Well, I tell you, I saw.
Let's get a break.
We got a break.
Let's get a break.
You're listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Wednesday, July the 20th, the year 2016, with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. And you are listening to WRHS FM 89.7 Norwich, Illinois. And now back to Jim and Rich.
The big 89.7. On a clear night, you can hear us on Mannheim Road.
Hey.
Yay. Wait a minute. Grab the mic. John's got news.
A little further, and we go to York Road now.
All right.
With that new transmitter and power supply I donated to the school, it's much better.
All right.
All kidding aside, guys, I was at York and Grand Avenue here a couple weeks ago, and I picked up the station loud and clear over there.
Wow, York and Grand. Yeah.
Right. Wow. Right, there's a place over there where you can buy cigarettes. It's a little cubby hole, and you go in there, and Oscar, I go there to get Oscar his cigarettes, and I was standing in line waiting to get in line there, and I picked up the station. I even heard myself and was loud and clear.
Oh my
Holy
God!
crap.
Yeah.
Oh my God!
That's interesting.
Yes, it is.
York and Grand on a I got to change the tagline now. I got to remember that.
Yep.
On a clear
Wow.
on a clear night, you can hear us on York and Grand.
Hey, and that was probably during the day that John was
It
there.
was, yeah, about 1:30 in the afternoon, to be
Oh.
honest with you.
Man, I bet you at night, on a clear night, you can hear us all the way out to Route 83.
I start tuning into my radio when I get to Fox Lake.
I'm waiting for that day when we're a powerhouse.
Oh man,
I'm also waiting for the day when I can actually make money doing this.
That would be good too.
Yeah,
That'd be all right.
Yeah, I'd be liking that too.
That makes 4 of us.
Going back to the White Sox, I think you're right. They have this mentality to satisfy their fans who are never satisfied.
Yeah, that's true. They're not.
Oh, we got to show something. We got to do something. We're still in this thing. I loved Robin's description of the season. Well, we were good, and then we were bad, and then we were a little better, now we're bad again.
I was reading. There was a comment in the paper the other day from Todd Steverson, the hitting coach.
Yeah.
He said, "Oh, we hit well this year, but we were just in a little funk. Over the. I mean, those are my words, but I'm like, what? First off, this is the man you need to throw a life preserver to, because if Ventura stays, somebody's got to get fired, and he's going to be the likely guy.
He's going to be the one.
Yeah." Even though I don't see where he's got anything to do with it, but I never could figure out why you fire your hitters are hitting lousy, so you fire the hitting coach.
That always makes
John.
That always makes sense.
Yeah.
I can't see, if it's another year, even if they wind up finishing 500, which is probably what this team actually is. I can't see Ventura staying another year, but then again, he's family.
Yeah.
And, the Reinsdorfs always take care of family.
Yeah.
Although if Robin does get whacked and they bring in a new manager, Robin will be the director of player development or some nebulous title.
Well, you know what? I don't. Obviously, a good coach or a successful coach or manager. My hat's off to them, because when you have the horses and you perform, it's not always that easy to do, even with the horses. But my question would be, say that Joe Madden was the manager of the White Sox. Do you think they'd be any better? No, I don't think so either.
No. It's what he's. It's what he's dealt. It's what he's dealt with. What do they say a manager is worth to a team each year? What, 10 games?
I would say, if I'd put it this way, that would be a lot. I would think.
Yeah.
I just hope he doesn't lose you a ton of games.
Yeah.
But I mean, here's the. I don't know if you got a chance to read the article about the Sox game last night.
I'm just kind of glancing at it now.
Sale sort of subtly said he went through 8 innings. He had, I think he had 100 pitches, and I guess in the 8th he, I want to say he hit a couple of guys, so he looked like he might have been losing it, but he still was ahead. I think 3-0 still. And he sort of said, "Well, yeah, it is what it is."
Yeah, so you can only do so much.
You could do, and they put. But I guess my point is, you got the man, your ace, okay, throwing a shutout. He's at 100 pitches, and he says something, and he goes, "Well, if I would have struggled in the ninth, then I'd be over 120, and then, does that, sort of build up at the end of the year?" But I'm thinking, you know what? At some point in the season, you have to say, okay, we can't screw around with this. I don't care, not that I don't care, but if this guy's got to throw an extra 10 or 20 pitches to get us a win that we need, why not put, he's held them to 0 runs. Why not let him finish it?
Right.
Now you bring in Robertson. It's not his night. They end up losing.
Yeah.
So it mystifies me. This guy's handled this team for 8 innings. You already know that. You don't know what the guy you're bringing in has got that night. It mystifies me.
It goes back to what we've talked about so often, the formulaic approach that every manager seems to take right now. Oh my God, he's hit that magic number. He's 100 pitches. We have to take him out of the ballgame.
Mm-hmm.
Let's bring our closer in now because we're in the ninth inning, and by golly, you bring your closer in the ninth inning, and you got a 3-run lead in the ninth. We must bring in our closer, and he stinks out. He stinks out the place.
Yeah, I mean, last night he didn't have it. So, you know what? You probably had a game that. Let's put it this way: what if you would have? Now, this is all in hindsight, but say, what if you would have started Sale off in the ninth, and now after a bat or two, you see, okay, we got to make a switch. Okay, he's lost it.
Exactly.
You know what? Your end result's not going to be any different anyway.
It might not. Okay, so let's say you bring Sale in. He gets or not. You bring Sale in the ninth. He gets the first batter out.
Mm-hmm.
You have somebody up in the bullpen.
Yeah.
Maybe he gets the first batter out. The second one, maybe it's starting to get a little rocky.
Mm-hmm.
Then you make your change.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you would have gotten through that with that one less batter to face.
That's possible.
I
mean, I agree. Jim, though, how many times, because we go back and we started watching baseball in the 60s and saw it in the 70s. And, how many times did you see a pitcher, especially a guy like Sale, who's an ace? I mean, probably the best pitcher in the American League. He might be, he's in the top 5 pitchers in baseball.
Well, I think with Kershaw out right now, he could be the best pitcher in baseball.
Well, I'm counting Kershaw when he's healthy and in.
Yeah.
I would say he's the best. But let's say this. Chris Sale is one of the top 5-10 pitchers in the game on any given night. Now, when would you see even a Bob Gibson or a Sandy Koufax, who are losing it a little bit, with a 3-run lead, a manager in those days is going to say, this guy, not only does he have great stuff, but he knows how to pitch.
Yeah.
So if he lost a little bit of it, he's going to maybe be able to gut his way through, or he's going to do it on smarts or whatever. But your ace is your ace for a reason.
Right. And you know what? I mean, I think in the old days, and just the guys you mentioned, especially somebody like Gibson, his manager, if he was brave enough, would have walked out there and said, how you feeling?
Yeah.
He said, and he'd probably look at him. He says, what the hell are you doing out here? I'm feeling fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that would have been the end of the discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to bring I'm listening to a game now, talking about pitch counts and pitchers, and I think we might have talked about this on this show. But it was about 2 weeks ago. I'm listening to the Cubs game, and Pat Hughes. I think Pat Hughes is a closet. This whole pitch count thing is BS, because I've heard him mention this on a couple broadcasts in relation to different players from different eras. But it was the 40th anniversary, 50th anniversary of the Marichal Spahn game.
I was just going to ask you, did it have something to do with that?
And he goes into the details, and he says, okay, Warren Spahn was 42, Juan Marichal was like 25 or 27. One of them, I think it might have been Spahn, threw 240 pitches in the game. Yeah. Marichal threw 200 and it was in the teens. He said, Willie Mays ended it in the 16th inning with a home run. He said the amazing thing is, not that itself wasn't amazing, both men then took their next turn in the rotation. Warren Spahn at 42, after his rest, 3 days, whatever it was, came back and pitched a 9-inning shutout the next game. And I'm thinking, shit. I mean, excuse me.
John. John.
I'm thinking today.
John, here. You want to use my phone, John? Call the priest. Okay.
The manager's fired. The pitcher's shut down for the season.
And the radio station is off the air.
Man. That just slipped out. I'm sorry.
Oh.
But I'm thinking, what in the heck is it's amazing.
Yeah,
it's amazing. So
it's such a different game, and the only old timer I ever heard, and I don't even know how much. Well, yeah, he's an old timer. he just passed away recently, Milt Pappas, said that he came up when he was 17.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason he lasted the way he did, he said, because he didn't know any better when he came up, but Paul Richards never let him throw more than 75 or 80 pitches when he was out there.
Yeah.
He said, and that's how I learned.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I learned to manage the game. That's how I learned to control myself.
Now,
And he said, and that's how I was able to improve.
now, I think Pappas is onto something, because I'm not going to totally throw out the thinking in today's game, because I'll say a name will pop into my head, a pitcher, and I'll look and I'll say, man, this guy had two, 3 good years in a row, or he had one very good year, and then inevitably the next year, boom, the guy dropped right off the cliff, and I'll say, well, maybe that's a guy who was overpitched or threw too many pitches. So I'm not going to totally throw out what they're doing today, because I think every guy is different. But Nolan Ryan, I know that his order to the Texas manager and pitching coaches, I don't want you to go by a pitch count. I want you to go by what you see. If the guy starts to alter his delivery, you can see he's tiring because that's what he's doing. Yeah, then make your move. But if a guy, I don't care how many pitches the guy's throwing, if his form's still good, if he looks strong, if he tells you he feels strong, then let him go. He's okay. And I think that's the difference today.
I think so. I think so. It's tough. It's such a different game today. And in the old days, a starting pitcher would go out and really save his best stuff to late in the game.
Yeah.
He'd pace himself.
Yeah, that's true.
Now it's go out, throw it all in the first, and if you can get yourself 6 innings, you get yourself a quality start.
Yeah, 6 innings and 3 runs.
6 innings and 3 runs, and
That's a quality start.
You have a quality start, and that's good for something at contract negotiation time.
Now, you're the mathematician, Jim, but I think I've done this math before. If you were consistently going 6 innings and giving up 3 runs, I want to say your earned run average over the course of a year is like 4.5, which is not quality.
Let's see, if they're 3 earned runs, so that's you're 4.5.
You're 4.5.
Your earned run average is 4.5.
So that's a quality.
That's a quality pitcher
deal.
That's a quality pitcher, by golly.
Yeah, well, not in my book, and probably not in a lot of other people's books here we go, sounding old, but I think you can't throw everything that's old out as being wrong. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people still around who would say that's not a quality start.
I don't think that's a quality start. I just happened to be glancing here at the article today in the Sun-Times, Baseball by the Numbers, and they're talking about another one of your favorite analytics, the WOBA.
Well, I saw that, and I wish I would have read it, but I didn't.
It's the weighted on base average.
Weighted, what does that mean?
That's a good question, except Anthony Rizzo is 4th in the NL at 413 right now.
Weighted on base.
Right. Let's see. It's a linear weights formula, and the aim is to give each offensive outcome its proper weight. Is a walk as valuable as a single? No. Both put a man on base, but a walk advances runners only if first base is occupied. So the basic WOBA formula multiplies intentional walks by 0.69 and singles by 0.89. I can see you're starting to glaze over.
I am glazing over. Can you say that again? What are they doing?
So the value of a WOBA, the value of an intentional walk,
okay,
towards the WOBA is one intentional walk is really only worth 0.69 towards this weighted on base average. A single is 0.89. But these aren't as hard and fast numbers. They're adjusted by offensive context and are slightly different. In 2016, a hit in high scoring times doesn't have precisely the same value as it does in low scoring times. Oh, wow. Doubles, okay. Let's stick with average base values for another example. Is a double twice as valuable, or a triple 3 times as valuable as a single, as slugging percentage calculates them? No. Both have more potential to advance runners and leave the hitter in better position to score, but each puts only one man on base. So doubles are multiplied by 1.27 and triples by 1.62. That equates to doubles being 1.43 times and triples 1.82 times as valuable as singles. Wow.
Well, I mean, I don't know about the exact fractions of numbers that they're talking about, but I don't think that that's anything that anybody doesn't recognize. I mean, if you're on third, it's much easier to score than when you're on first.
Yeah. And how good is good? A Fangraphs guide to WOBA lists 290 as awful, 300 as poor, 310 is below average, 320 is average, 340 is above average, 370 is great, and 400 is excellent. So you've got 4 National League hitters that are above 400 right now. The Diamondbacks' Jake Lamb at 419, the Nationals' Daniel Murphy at 415, the Cardinals' Matt Carpenter at 415, and Anthony Rizzo of the Cubs is 413.
So, in other words, their hits are putting them in scoring position more often?
Their
on bases are
their on bases are putting not only them but the runners in better position. I'm kind of interpreting it that way.
Well, I mean, you're pushing if there's a runner on first and you get a double, you're either pushing them to third or scoring them.
Right.
So I would think that a lot of what they're talking about here either plays out in slugging percentage or RBIs or whatever.
Yeah.
It sounds to me like a sort of offshoot of RBIs and slugging percentage.
I think so.
Maybe a closer look at it if you want to. Where
think
they're getting the actual, like, I don't know if I got the right number, but you said 1.82 or 1.182 or something like that. For one of those
a triple
hits.
is multiplied by 1.62.
1.62.
And that equates to doubles being 1.43 times and triples being 1.82 times as valuable as singles. Because a single isn't worth 1, it's worth 0.89.
Okay, I'm just wondering how they are.
They have the whole formula.
Yeah.
They have the whole formula here that would really, an unintentional base. Okay, the formula is. I'm starting to feel like I'm Jake Mathis teaching a class, our old algebra teacher. 0.69 times unintentional base on balls. 0.72 times hit by pitcher. 0.88 plus 0.88 times singles. Plus 1.24 times doubles, plus 1.57 times triples, plus 2.02 times home runs divided by at-bats plus base on balls minus intentional base on balls plus sacrifice flies plus hit by pitchers. There's your formula.
Excellent. Very good.
And we must build and build and build.
Build and build. We built. You know what?
We must learn polynomials.
So I think what we did is took the obvious and just put some numbers on it.
Really, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah. I know that many times in 16-inch softball, when the leadoff hitter comes up and you need him in scoring position, we all go double, 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 double. So I mean, we already know that him being on second's better than him being
on first. That's the way it goes.
Yeah.
Okay. A couple other things since I'm looking at the clock here. I see. Did you see the video that Peanut Tillman put up announcing his retirement?
I heard about it.
It was actually pretty good. Peanut known for everything, punching things out of people's hands.
Yeah.
He's walking through everywhere and punching things out of hands, including knocking a donut out of his daughter's hands as she was eating it.
Yeah, I heard that. That's what he did.
And then went in and hung his spikes up on the wall, and that was the end of it.
Well, there's not that many guys that I could say, I'm totally positive about in sports. I mean, some of them I just don't know much about to begin with. But Peanut Tillman is, in my mind, in that totally positive category.
Yeah.
I just think
Yeah,
a really good
it
guy
just-
who's had a
Just a really, really good guy.
yeah. So
And had a great career, and that's somebody I think I would hope to see in the Hall of Fame someday.
you know what, I think you probably will. And Coach, I don't know if you know Coach Mike Pagliaro Sr.
Mm-hmm.
And a knowledgeable guy about football, and a guy who will say things to you that provoke thoughts. And one time he said to me, he says, I think the Bears have, and this is in the Lovey era, he says, you got Urlacher, you got Briggs, you got Tillman. He might have named somebody else, I can't think of who. He says, but I think Peanut Tillman is a Hall of Famer.
I think.
And I said, you know what, Coach, I think you're probably right. That's the way I look
You're
at it.
probably right. I think that could be. Why did we get on the discussion earlier on Ted Abernathy?
Was
it? Oh, it was after that one of those games where you were the bullpen kind of failed, and you were hoping for Oscar Zamora and Twiggy Hartenstein to come back.
Yeah, I was sort of tongue-in-cheeking it, and then I think you came back and I said, maybe Bill Fall and Turk Wendell to shore up the rotation.
Yeah, and then we started. I said I'd have been happy with Carlos Marmol and Goose Gossage.
Right.
That's right. Then we started. That's how we got off.
Then we went further back, and one of us, I think it was you, said, "How about Ted Abernathy?"
There we go.
And Phil and the Vulture, Phil
Yeah,
Regan.
that's right. Yeah, that's right. That's how we got
And
on.
I went on to, because you said you suggested to go on to YouTube to look for something about Ted Abernathy. I couldn't find anything. But I said I love Ted Abernathy when we were kids, because we were still pretty much kids when Abernathy was around. We were probably in high school or something.
We were in high school then.
But I loved watching that submarine pitch.
Yeah.
It just was, and you know what I never could understand. I could see you coming from down under like that, but to make it to say, I don't know, can a submarine guy, one like that, can he throw a curveball, or does the natural movement of that ball, is that enough?
I don't know.
Does he even have any pitches that off of how could you put it? Overhand you can throw various pitches. Underhand, can you
I don't
throw
know.
anything other than just underhand?
That'd be a good question. And you said you couldn't think of any others, and I said, how could we have forgotten Kent
Right
Tekulve?
after that, I thought of Tekulve, and then you came up with
Quisenberry.
And I want to say,
And the guy that the Sox had, and the Japanese guy.
he might have been. I can't think of what his name was.
I can't think of what his name was.
That was the guy who was the closest thing to. Was it Stu Miller?
Yeah.
Where he threw slower and slowest. The guy for the Sox was probably, but not as good, because they figured him out after a little while.
Yeah. What was it? The story and was it about Stu Miller that Garagiola had when somebody came up and really flailed at one of Stu Miller's pitches and came back and sat down, and he said he throws you that Wells Fargo pitch. And they said, "What's a Wells Fargo pitch?" He said, "It comes to you in stages."
I remember that one.
I gave you a book recommendation over the
tell me a
weekend.
little bit about
Tim
that.
Kirchian, who's an analyst on Baseball Tonight on ESPN, wrote a book, and I'm going to look for it in the library. I was sitting in Barnes and Noble on Sunday waiting for Dana, and the book is called "I'm Fascinated by Sacrifice Flies." And there were some great stories in there where he talked about how funny baseball can be.
Mm-hmm.
He said, and how he said that the title came about. I'm fascinated by Sacrifice Flies. Is they're watching and he says he's very meticulous, cuts out box scores and keeps it in his notes and all this stuff. And he said they got on him one time because there was a game when Carlos Lee, or as Gene Honda always would say, number 45, Carlos Lee, got his 13th sacrifice fly for the year. And this was before the All-Star break.
Oh, wow.
And he said, and he got on the air when their show, and they went, he said, I'm fascinated by sacrifice flies, and everybody on the panel jumped on him because of that. He said, he's got 13 sacrifice flies. The Major League record is 19. It's the All-Star break. He's going to break that. Well, he never got another sacrifice fly the rest of the year.
Yeah.
But he had some great stories in there, and apparently Kirkjian must have worked as a newspaper writer in Baltimore because he talked a lot he had a whole chapter about Mike Flanagan.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not realize two things about Mike Flanagan. I had forgotten that Flanagan was the GM of the Orioles for a period of time and got fired. Mm-hmm. And then went into broadcasting and was very good. But he said that the period of time as the GM when they were going through all the losing and he getting fired and that, he says he just wasn't the same. And unfortunately, in 2011, Mike Flanagan committed suicide. And I did not really know that. But he says that Flanagan would be great to throw off one-liners as you talk to him about something. He said that there was an opener one year that the Oriole mascot fell off the dugout and had to be helped out down there. And he asked Flanagan, and Flanagan came up to him after it. He says, as he was walking by me, I told him to take 2 worms and call me in the morning.
Take 2 worms.
He said, and another one was he was talking about some pitcher, and I can't remember who it was. But he said there was a game up in the Orioles were up in Toronto playing the Blue Jays, and the pitcher for the Orioles was clocked at 87 miles an hour. His fastball was clocked at 87 miles an hour, and Flanagan says that's 82 Canadian. and the other one was when he was talking about that stretch of Orioles Cy Young Award winners. He said, and he described it. He says in '79, he said Flanagan won the Cy Young. So he said in 1980, as Steve Stone was having his Cy Young season, he said he was describing it. He said, well, during the season, he said, until it's over, he said, I'm Cy present. Mm-hmm. He said, Stone, he's Cy future. He said, and he pointed at Jim Palmer. He says, he's Cy past. He said, and when one of us gets traded, we'll be Cy Onara. And there were some other great stories, and I think I'm going to look for the book because I think it's a good read.
Book's title again?
I'm fascinated by sacrifice flies.
It's a great title, and I'll tell you why. Even say in 16-inch softball, so obviously you can hit the ball pretty easily. Guys will, obviously guys just like in league ball will fly out all the time. But when you need a guy to fly out, say you got that runner on third, and you want to get him out, it's not as easy as
it's not that. Yeah.
So I'm impressed by sacrifice flies.
All right. Hey, John. Anything else on your mind today? You've been kind of quiet today. Did you miss us?
Yeah, I
did.
Did
you miss us?
Yes, I did.
Oh, yeah.
Really, I enjoy being with you people. Like I said before, you people are my family. I have 2 questions to ask you. Okay, now you just talked about Steve Stone.
Yeah.
He was with WGN for a while, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He was.
Yeah, he worked with Harry for many years.
Yeah, that's right.
And then Chip Carey.
Yeah, okay, because I remember meeting Steve Stone somewhere. I don't know if it was at the WGN studios when we were working there or whatever. Another gentleman that I don't hear anymore is Milo Hamilton. What happened to him?
Milo passed away within the last few years. Milo was in his 80s.
Oh, is that right?
And passed away. He had retired after he got run out of town here, after he couldn't stand working with Harry and went to radio. He went down to Houston and was the Astros broadcaster for the final years of his career. So he was down there for 20 years or more. That's
right. Now, what announcer did he work with, Milo Hamilton?
Well, he worked. It was kind of interesting over his career. He was in St. Louis, and worked with
No,
Harry.
I mean what Chicago was.
Oh,
Jim.
Chicago. He worked with Bob Elson initially. I remember him with Elson
Who
back
was-
in the
who
early
was-
60s.
Who was with Jack Brickhouse?
Vince Lloyd.
Oh yeah, Vince Lloyd. Yeah.
Nice
yeah.
man. He was a nice
Because
man.
I remember that he was the color with one of the sports announcers, and then when that gentleman left, they thought that Milo Hamilton should get
It was designated that he was going to when Brickhouse retired. Brickhouse announced his retirement,
right.
and they brought Milo Hamilton was already here. Brickhouse announced his retirement and said that Milo would be the number one announcer.
Mm-hmm.
And then the following during the off season, that was when the White Sox announced their what was that called? Sports Vision.
Oh, yeah.
Their Sports Vision, where it was going to be pay-per-view.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Harry said, nobody's going to hear me. So the opening came that somebody contacted him about the Cubs. So they hired him for the Cubs job, and I still remember the press conference.
Yeah, now
Seeing Milo sitting out in the audience with his arms crossed, and Harry getting up on the podium and going, "Hiya, Milo, how you doing?"
yeah, I remember that. Yes.
And the only time I think I ever heard Milo laugh during that period of time that he was working with Harry was there was a game. You remember Marla Collins, the ball girl?
Yeah.
There was a game, and she used to wear those cute little hot pants,
Yeah.
that cute little hot pants outfit. Well, the weather changed, and it got cold. And there's Marla had to put on regular baseball pants, long pants, and they take a shot of her during the game, and Harry said, "Hey, there's Marla Collins. That's the first time we've seen her with her pants on since the opening day."
Oh, jeez.
And Harry suddenly realized what he just said and started to laugh, and you heard Milo chuckle and go, "If you think I'm going to help you out of this, you're out of your mind."
Well, I didn't know that Milo passed away.
Yeah,
because,
he passed. He was in his mid to late 80s.
Is that right? Oh boy.
Yeah. You can. Yeah, you Google him and you'll find out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
All right. Is that's our questions for today?
Yeah, that's my two questions for today.
All
Because
right.
when you start talking about Steve Stone, it brought back Milo Hamilton and some of those good old.
Milo Hamilton was a good announcer. Milo Hamilton had a tendency to get carried away with stats, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But nothing wrong with that.
I don't remember.
I thought he was a good, solid announcer.
That's right. I agree.
I have to say, you know what? There was two guys here in town that were announcers that I didn't like. One was Ed Farmer, and
Still
the other
here.
was Len Casper.
You don't like Len?
But even those two guys have sort of grown on me. Where, I'm not saying they're my favorites, but yeah, you know what? First off, what these guys do is not easy.
No.
And
No,
and
it's
you
not.
know what?
Believe me, that's not.
So I appreciate. I guess my point would be whether it's Milo Hamilton or whoever else you want to name. I basically liked almost all the announcers that they've had. I mean, both sides of town. So
Yeah.
Yep.
I think the only guy I never really took a liking to was, and I'll go way back on it. It was Jack Dries when he did the White Sox games in the late 60s.
you liked them or you didn't?
Did not like him at all. Did not like him.
I think.
I always thought, as a kid, listening to him on the radio, I thought Bob Elson was one of the most boring individuals.
Oh yeah, I just going to say that. You took the words out of
Bob
my mouth.
Elson was one of the most, but there were a couple of things. When I worked for Northwest Federal Savings, and we'll go back to Chuck Shaden here with that, because Northwest Federal sponsored his show.
Mm-hmm.
And he would come in and record his show every Saturday in the lobby.
Mm-hmm.
Great sense of humor, and he had a laugh. He had an infectious laugh that I heard him, and the thing that was always kind of cool, sometimes you'd come in on Saturdays, or you'd check to see in the employee newsletter who Elson's guest was going to be. And then we'd find an excuse to come in on a Saturday. And there was one Saturday he had Jimmy Pearsall. So all of us had to find an excuse to come in that day to listen to that. And then always after that, you'd go in back into the boardroom, and there'd be coffee or whatever. And Pearsall started on Elson, and Elson started to laugh. And honest to God, I thought he was going to wet himself. He had Elson going, and he had a laugh that was just really a lot of fun. And I told that story to Jack Brickhouse, and he smiled.
Yeah.
He said, I understand what you mean. He
Yeah.
said he was that way. He was not that way when he brought Brickhouse to Chicago. He was not that way at all. He said after he came back from the war, he changed his style.
Brickhouse was a good sports announcer.
Brickhouse was a good announcer.
I think he was one of the best that they had in sports broadcasting.
And I always laugh at a story that I remember reading, and I don't know what it was. It was some luncheon. He said Tom Dreesen was in town, and he says, "There's a Hall of Famer." He said, Jack Brickhouse sitting right there with Irv Cupson, with his pal Irv Cupson.
Irv Cupson.
He said, "You realize there's a whole generation of football fans in Chicago who don't know anything about football because they grew up listening to Jack and Irv on the Bears games on WGN."
John WGN, that's correct.
That's right, Jack.
Well, I tell you, Jack Brickhouse was great, but I tell you, there's two other guys that are great sportscasters, and I'm looking right at them.
Oh,
Oh my God!
Oh my God! Did you bring the check?
Hey, I don't want to prolong this, but ran into Don Gelsomino Jr. Friday, who is going to be our new head football coach, or is our new head football coach at Ridgewood. And I happened to see his father, Don Sr., on Wednesday, and they're both excited to get the season going. And Donnie Sr. told me, he said he's going to join us up in the booth, and he's a knowledgeable football guy. I'm thinking maybe we'll have him sit in a little bit for me and do some color with you, and if he wants, on the other hand, who knows, maybe he'll do it once, but he probably wants to see his son's team play more than sit there and analyze a game.
If he wants to do play-by-play, you and I can take the whole night off.
Oh, thanks, guys.
There you go.
You and I can go down to the concession stand and actually get something to eat.
Yeah,
That'll be
thanks.
good.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Really, I like to talk to Pat about that too. We need more room up in the broadcast booth.
Well, John, you know what? I passed by the back of the school the other day.
You know what?
and I
Let's
saw-
wrap it up and we'll talk up.
Yeah,
we'll
that's
talk
it, yeah.
about we'll talk about our complaints off the air.
Yeah. No complaints.
No. Hey, once again, we managed to have no plans to talk about anything, and we killed 70 minutes.
Yeah. We killed it, is right.
Somebody killed it dead before it spreads. All right, let's wrap it up. A lot of fun again. Thanks for listening. We'll do this again. Hey, we're going to do this again next week. Until that time, thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. We had fun. We are out of here. We are Taillights.
You have been listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Wednesday, July the 20th, the year 2016 on Jack FM, 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich, and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network with the WRHS sports announcers Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. This broadcast was directed by John DeVita, and our special thanks to radio station manager Kevin Zeflik of WRHS FM Norwich and the executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, Mr. John Shikanda. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Tuesday, July the 19th, the year 2016. Until next time, friends, please be safe and thanks for listening. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich, Illinois. Have a great day, friends.